right, so we're diving deep into Turtles All the Way Down by John Green.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
This young adult novel that takes us inside the head of Aza Holmes,
Yeah.
a teenager who's dealing with some pretty intense OCD and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So are you ready to kind of unpack this one?
I am.
All right, so let's start with the first few chapters. Can you
Okay.
give us a little overview of like Aza and her world?
Yeah, so we meet Aza, and she is a high school student in Indianapolis, and like right away we just get hit with these intrusive thoughts she's having, and primarily focused on bacteria,
Okay.
and specifically C. diff.
Oh, wow.
And this fear is so real for her that she's carrying hand sanitizer everywhere, and then she's also compulsively picking at a callus on her finger,
Oh, geez.
convinced that it's infected.
So it seems like her OCD is really impacting like her everyday life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, even simple things like eating lunch with her best friend Daisy is, really a challenge because of her anxieties.
Yeah.
But then things take a bit of a turn when Daisy introduces a new obsession, and it is the disappearance of a local billionaire, Russell Pickett.
Ooh, the missing billionaire.
Yes.
So that sounds like we've got a little mystery here.
There is a little mystery, and Daisy is all about that $100,000 reward that's being offered.
Right.
So she convinces Asa to go with her to, like, Pickett's abandoned estate.
Okay.
And they don't find him,
Right.
but they do find something, and it's a photo of Russell from the night that he vanished.
Oh, so that's got to pique their curiosity.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right, so they're starting to play detective a little bit here.
Yes.
But I'm curious, how does Oz's OCD play into all of this?
Well, imagine trying to solve a mystery, but you're constantly battling these intrusive thoughts. It's like having two completely separate realities happening at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times for Aluza, those anxieties, they overshadow what's happening, around her.
Gotcha. So we've got this mystery kind of brewing. And I imagine things are probably going to get a little bit more complicated as we move forward in the book.
Yeah, definitely. So, Aza has this connection to the Pickett family from like a summer camp that she attended years ago.
Oh, okay.
And it turns out she knew Davis, who is Russell Pickett's son.
Oh, wow.
And he is dealing with his own grief over losing his mother and then his father's sudden disappearance.
So Aza and Davis have a little bit of a history.
They do. They do.
Okay, so that adds another layer to this whole thing.
Yes, it does. And, Aza and Daisy, they go to visit Davis, hoping to get, maybe some more clues.
Yeah.
But he kind of calls her out.
Really?
He's like, are you just in this for the reward money?
Oh, wow.
He senses that she's holding back, and he wants to know if she genuinely cares.
That's got to be tough for Aza, especially given everything that she's dealing with internally.
Definitely.
All right, so where do we go from here?
Okay, so despite this tension, they start texting.
Okay.
And they end up going on a double date with Daisy and her boyfriend, Michael. Fun. Yeah, it's during this date that Aza finally opens up to Davis about her OCD.
Okay.
And he shares about his grief over his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're really starting to connect on a deeper level here.
It sounds like they're finding a bit of solace in each other's vulnerability.
Yeah.
All right, so then what happens?
So Davis, he wants to prove to Aza that he really does care for her and that he's not like his father.
Okay.
So he makes a pretty big gesture. He
Yeah.
gives her $100,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, he thinks it will help ease her anxieties about finances, and that'll show that he's really committed to her.
That's a pretty big gesture.
Yeah.
So how does she respond to that?
She's kind of thrown off by it.
Understandably.
Yeah. She and Daisy end up splitting the money.
Okay.
But Aza feels really uncomfortable with the whole situation, whereas Daisy's like embracing her newfound wealth.
Oh, yeah.
And she goes on a bit of a spending spree.
It's interesting how they both respond differently to that same situation.
Very different personalities.
So what about Aza and Davis?
So there's definitely a growing attraction between the two.
Okay.
But Aza's anxieties are always present.
Yeah.
Like her fear of contamination, it creates this barrier between them.
Oh, wow.
And there's this point where she tries to kiss him,
Okay.
but her OCD just triggers this panic attack.
Oh, no.
And she ends up compulsively rinsing her mouth.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was rough.
It sounds like it.
And to make things worse, her friendship with Daisy, it starts to like fracture, partly because of the money, and partly because Daisy writes a fanfic
Oh, no.
that portrays OCD in a way that Aza finds very insensitive and hurtful.
So things are getting really complicated.
Yes, they are.
So where does this leave Aza as we kind of move into the next part of the story?
Well, her anxiety continues to escalate.
Okay.
And she makes this really risky decision where she drinks hand sanitizer.
What?
Yeah, thinking that it'll help combat bacteria.
Wow.
And then she ends up causing a car accident while she's arguing with Daisy.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll have to wait until part 2 to hear what happens next.
Yes.
But before we go, can you just give us like a quick recap of the main themes that we've kind of explored so far?
Yeah, so we've seen, how debilitating Aza's OCD is, how it impacts her relationships, her sense of self, even her ability to just enjoy simple things.
Right.
We've also seen the complicated dynamics of her friendship, the allure of this mystery, and then the beginning of this romance that is burdened by, her internal struggles.
That is a lot to unpack.
It is.
We'll be back with part 2 of this deep dive into Turtles All the Way Down to find out what happens to Aza after that accident, and if she can find a path towards healing and self-acceptance. Welcome back. So last time we left off with Aza kind of spiraling, drinking hand sanitizer and crashing her car.
It was a dark turn.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So she ends up hospitalized with a lacerated liver, and then her fear of bacteria goes into hyperdrives.
It does.
So the hospital's got to be a pretty scary place for her.
It is. Oh, absolutely. I mean, being in a place that's associated with illness, it's just a nightmare for her.
So does it get any better from there?
Well, in a moment of desperation, she actually drinks even more hand sanitizer.
Oh, geez.
Which further damages her liver.
Wow.
And it's this terrifying reminder of how her compulsions can be so self-destructive.
It really sounds like she's hit rock bottom.
She does. She really does. But this crisis becomes a turning point for her, Her mom is there for her.
Yeah.
Her psychiatrist, Dr. Singh, helps adjust her medication. And slowly she starts to recover, both physically and emotionally.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
But what about the whole mystery of Russell Pickett?
Right. So that storyline continues.
Okay.
And it starts to intertwine with her recovery in a really interesting way.
Okay.
So she's been getting these kind of cryptic notes from Russell's phone.
Really?
Sent by his younger son, Noah.
Oh, wow.
And as she starts to piece things together, her unique way of thinking, her tendency to overanalyze and connect these seemingly unrelated details, it actually becomes like a strength for her.
Interesting. So it's like that whole thing, your biggest weakness can be your biggest strength.
Exactly.
Kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, and remember those tuatars?
Oh, yeah, the reptiles.
Yes, the long-lived reptiles that Russell was obsessed with. Well, all those clues in the notes, they're related to tuatars and their habitat.
Okay.
And Akaza's, intense focus, her ability to hyperfocus allows her to decipher those clues.
So does she end up finding him?
She does.
Okay.
But not in the way that you might expect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so remember how she's been so fixated on bacteria, especially C. diff?
Right.
Well, it turns out Russell had built this underground bunker on his property.
What?
Yeah, and it was designed to protect him from a C. diff outbreak.
Oh, wow. So he went totally off the grid.
He did.
Self-imposed isolation.
Yeah, driven by his own fears and anxieties.
And did he survive?
Well, sadly, he died in that bunker.
Okay.
Probably from natural causes.
So his attempt to control his environment kind of backfired.
It did. It really did.
So what about Aza? What happens to her after she solves this case?
Well, life doesn't just become perfect,
Right.
Her journey with OCD is ongoing. She breaks up with Davis because she realizes she needs to focus on her own well-being before she can be in a healthy relationship.
That makes sense.
And she reconciles with Daisy, but their friendship, it's not the same. They've both been through a lot, and it's really tested their bond.
It's interesting how these relationships kind of evolve,
Yeah.
and how they can be strained by all these challenging experiences.
Absolutely.
But is there any hope for Aza, in the end?
There is, yeah. There's this really beautiful scene towards the end of the book where she's at an art show with Daisy and Michael, and she looks up at the sky, this vast, ever-changing expanse. And she realizes that her future isn't predetermined.
Yeah.
That she has the power to shape her own narrative and define her own happiness.
It's like a sense of possibility for her.
It is.
She's not defined by her OCD.
Exactly.
She's not a victim of her circumstances. She's a young woman with strength and resilience.
Yeah.
To face whatever comes next.
And that's what makes this book so powerful and so hopeful.
Yeah.
It doesn't offer these easy answers or magical cures.
Right.
But it reminds us that healing is possible, that growth can emerge from even the darkest times.
So as we wrap up part 2 here, what are some key takeaways that our listeners can kind of ponder?
Well, I think it's important to remember that mental illness is a journey. It's
Yeah.
not a destination.
Right.
There will be ups and downs, moments of despair and moments of triumph.
Mm.
But with the right support and with self-compassion, it's possible to find a way forward. And Adasa's story teaches us that resilience isn't about being invincible. It's about getting back up after you fall.
Yeah.
And learning and growing from your experiences.
Such an important message,
Yeah.
especially for anyone who might be struggling with similar challenges.
Absolutely.
So we'll be back for the final part of this deep dive into Turtles All the Way Down to explore some of the deeper philosophical themes
Yes.
that are kind of woven into the story, including this whole intriguing metaphor of turtles all the way down.
All right, so we are back for the final part of our deep dive into Turtles All the Way Down.
Okay.
And, we followed Aza's journey as she navigates OCD and friendship and even a missing billionaire.
Right.
But I feel like there's this other layer to the story.
Yes.
Something that really gets you thinking.
Yeah, John Green really goes beyond just like a typical plot,
Right.
He tackles these big questions about like the nature of thought itself.
Yeah.
And he uses this metaphor of turtles all the way down.
So let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
What exactly is the significance of turtles all the way down? Well, it comes from this old idea that like the world rests on the back of a giant turtle.
Oh, yeah, I've heard it.
And when you ask what that turtle's standing on, the answer is, it's turtles all the way down.
Right. It's like never ending.
It's infinite,
Yeah.
It's like this idea that for every answer, there's just another question.
Yeah.
For every foundation, there's something else holding it up.
And I feel like that really connects to how Aza thinks.
Absolutely.
Her mind's constantly searching for certainty, for an explanation.
Yeah, that foundation.
But it's almost like the more she digs,
Yeah.
the more questions pop up.
Exactly. And it's like her OCD is what's fueling this endless pursuit of answers. She's trying to find that bottom turtle, that one truth that'll just make everything click into place.
Yeah.
But in reality, there may not be a bottom turtle.
Right.
It's not just her fear of bacteria or her compulsions. It's this deeper struggle with uncertainty, with the limits of what we can know as humans.
It's like John Green is exploring this fundamental part of being human.
Yeah.
This desire to understand the world, to make sense of it all.
Yeah, to find meaning in the chaos.
Yeah.
And he suggests that maybe embracing the mystery, the not knowing, is part of what makes us human.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
So how does all of this tie back into Aza's journey?
Well, her OCD, it's like this constant reminder that she can't control everything.
Right.
She can't control her intrusive thoughts. She can't always control those compulsions.
Yeah.
And this turtles all the way down idea kind of reflects that feeling of being trapped,
Yeah.
Like she's in this endless cycle of thoughts and anxieties.
But there's also a sense of hope in the book, right?
Here is.
Like maybe she could break free from that cycle.
Absolutely. So remember that art show scene
Mm-hmm.
where she looks up at the sky and feels this sense of possibility?
Yeah.
That moment shows a change in how she sees things,
Okay.
She realizes that, yeah, she can't control everything, but she can control how she reacts to her thoughts and feelings.
So it's less about finding all the answers
Yeah.
and more about learning to live with the uncertainty.
Exactly. It's about accepting that vastness and finding a way to just be okay with it,
Yeah.
And I think that's something that goes way beyond just OCD.
It's a universal thing.
Yeah. We all struggle with uncertainty. We all have questions we can't answer.
That's true.
But maybe the journey itself is more important than the destination.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a great discussion. I really appreciate you walking us through this.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
So as we kind of close out this deep dive into Turtles All the Way Down, is there one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Just embrace the mystery,
Oh.
Don't be afraid to ask those big questions.
Yeah.
To explore the complicated parts of life, even if you never find all the answers.
Right.
The journey of trying to understand, that's where the magic is.
That's a great way to put it. And on that note, thank you all for joining us for this deep dive into John Green's Turtles All the Way Down.